Hey, listeners, it's Paul Andriola here. Why not join our community at Small Cap Discoveries, where we offer our members direct access to some of the best microcap investment opportunities available? Our members are getting access to premium microcap financings, research reports, and direct access to management. Sign up today at www.smallcapdiscoveries.com.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Small Cap Discoveries conference call. Today is November 26, 2024, and we have back the CEO, Margaret Brodie from Rubicon Organics. Rubicon trades on the TSX Venture Exchange under the symbol ROMJ, and it also trades on the OTC under ROMJF. The company is currently trading at 33 cents with about 56 million shares outstanding, or about an $18.5 million market cap. I'd now like to hand it over to Paul Andriola.
Hey, thanks a lot, Trevor. Yeah, Margaret's back with us. Margaret's always one of the funnest interviews we do. Love it when we get a chance to talk to you, Margaret. But more importantly, we're going to get an update from you. We're going to get an idea of how things have been going for you. We're always interested in diving a little bit deeper in just the company and understand what's happening in the industry. So let's get at it. But before we sort of get into all the details and updates, maybe remind everybody what Rubicon's all about, then we can follow up some questions.
Absolutely. Well, Rubicon Organics is Canada's leading premium cannabis company. We are extremely focused on premium quality, but also organic. Some of our products aren't organic, but the majority are. That's very important to us, to the flavor forward nature of what we do in the experience for consumers. We are based in British Columbia, in Delta, British Columbia. That's where I'm sitting now, in a very glamorous trailer on site. As I like to say, we spend our money on our people and our quality. Quality first, I should mention. And really, we want to win and be the global leaders in premium and organic cannabis. Our company just delivered our third quarter results 2 weeks ago. In that, you'll have seen a quarter of 2 million of adjusted EBITDA. It's a very clean adjusted EBITDA. It's adjusted because there is a very odd biological assets calculation that's done for cannabis that distorts your results, in my view. And typically the analysts take that out, but otherwise it's quite a clean calculation. What you'll see is in the third quarter of 24, we delivered 34% growth on our revenue, and obviously follow along from the bottom line. And we delivered operating cash flow and obviously growth in EBITDA. And we're looking to continue that trend and deliver our outlook for the year, which is growth on last year's adjusted EBITDA, which was around $4.5 million. Less, we've invested about $1 million in our ERP program and some various other items like that are one-off and non-recurring, and really important for our business to grow. We plan to grow our business through contract manufacturing and contract partnerships. We have spent the last 18 months establishing those. And when you look at our results in that growth, I think a lot of people were skeptical that you could grow your business that way. And I think we're demonstrating that you can. And we're looking to build off of the power of the brands we've built and the quality that we put in market. Everything that we've done, what's next? This year, 2 years ago, we launched edibles. This year we launched vape, both very successfully, very thrilled with what our positioning is. And next year, I think the story from us is going to be, how do we play in the international markets? And the reputation and positioning that we have in Canada is really setting us up for what's next. And the inbound demands are pretty incredible. We're very excited to take our wonderful BC product around the world, and very proud of where we are and what we're doing.
Fantastic. That's awesome.
I should actually mention one thing that we have very publicly stated we've been working on refinancing our debt. We have $8 million US of debt that's due December 31st. We're deep into that process, as we've said publicly before, and it is expected to be refinanced before the end of the year. We're looking to be at or around the interest rate that the previous debt, or the current debt, I guess, was at, which is 7.5%. And what I'm looking to do is, and Janice, our CFO, has been very involved, getting our debt into a position for growth. So relatively long-term debt with great agricultural partners that demonstrates that this business has dry powder and is ready to go.
Fantastic. Yeah, I'm definitely going to come back to you on financials and things like that, but I want to dive a little bit deeper. 34% revenue growth is impressive. I think any business that can grow at that rate consistently stands out. But just that, do you see this as a bit of a one-off, or do you think you can continue to grow at that kind of pace? And if so, what's going to get you there?
Well, firstly, I would say that the cannabis industry and certainly our business, we've always found the first quarter, we're typically down somewhere between 15 and 25%, depending on the buying patterns for Christmas time. And then the inventory clear out before the provincial distributors clear down their inventory before their March year ends. So the first quarter is always tough for us. So when we think about the trajectory, I look at it either from Q2 to Q4 or year on year rather than that quarter. So I just always like to put that out there.
Sure.
But look, yeah, we're looking to grow the top line of our business organically. Do I want to continue to achieve those numbers? I don't like to give guidance. And as many people, when they've come to invest, they say, well, I like to ask that question when I'm going to invest. And as soon as I'm invested, I don't want you to give the guidance. So I think that maybe I'll wear beige a little bit. We haven't given our guidance for 25 yet, but I can say that we are focused on growth. And I believe that growth will come from increased flower throughput. We're looking to expand our flower capacity by about 20% next year. We've got around 10 to 11,000 kilos out of our existing facility, plus our edibles, which is not capacity constrained, nor is our vape. So, when you layer those on and the work we've done in the last 2 years, it's been very focused and strategic, doing one thing, doing it well, having it hit, move to the next, and executing. And I think, we've seen a lot of people take a scattergun approach in cannabis, and for us, it's building on the base. So if you say, is it repeatable? I think you're starting to see in our results that it is. We did see from, I would say, July of 23 until the spring of this year, real softness in the Canadian economy, which did translate to people not purchasing premium products. And that's okay. I mean, there's going to be moments of that. Premium products do better in a strong economy. We're seeing that more confidence from consumers, I would say, with inflation ticking down instead of a readjustment. I'd love to see a stronger economy, but I think that's where, we do well.
So let's dive back into some of the things you said. The growth is coming from a couple different areas right now. Maybe let's speak to that a little bit. You guys, you mentioned international growth coming. Are you guys selling internationally right now? I can't remember if you're not yet, right?
Not selling internationally, no. I think it's probably going to be part of our 25 growth story. What you'll see from me, if you look back since my time in this chair, has been very much hinting that we're working on something, then announcing that it is here, and then delivering on it and proving the execution on it. So I would say now is the hint phase. We've gone through this cycle over the last couple of years. I'm quite bullish on. I think this is the most confident I've been in terms of the future trajectory in the last 2 years, just because we've gone through the downturn in the economy, and we're also seeing the international markets really flood. And it's gone from a whisper of, oh, it's hard to get in, to a roar of, how do we get your product? What we're seeing is increasing in prices in the wholesale market in Canada as a result, but we're also seeing a lot of capacity turn back on. And many Canadian companies have pivoted completely out of the Canadian market, looking and selling all externally. There's risk to that. Firstly, the strength of our ability to sell into those markets at great profitability is because of the strength of our brand in Canada and the quality promise that people can have from us. But secondly, it's very easy for a medical market that's driven by a health system to make a regulatory change that could very easily close down a market. So continuing and being focused on winning in Canada, we believe, is extremely important, both for, win where you are, win at home. So what we want to do and who we are. It builds our ability to go internationally, and it protects our business in the long term. So you kind of want to, if we were a smaller company, I think you'd probably only be able to play in one successfully, but I believe that that's the right strategy.
Now, one thing I always like to talk with you about, you're so on top of it. It's just the general trends within the industry. We've talked about in the past how there was oversupply and sort of saturated markets of different products. What are you starting to see in terms of the sort of the industry right sizing of itself?
Well, the industry certainly has, but what we are seeing both in the legacy and legal markets is people firing back up because of the demand for the international markets.
Mhm.
That doesn't frighten me. I've been in the game now for 10 years since we started with a US play in 2015, pivoted the business out of that into Canada. I've seen the hype cycle
Mhm.
almost 3 times now. I think we're going to the top of pricing peak. I think, we saw major price compression last year when all that inventory, the last 2 years inventory was getting cleared out. I think that we'll probably have a stronger period of strong prices because of the demand internationally. And I think that's very positive for Canadian producers. Other trends I see is within Canada, getting on shelf is getting harder and harder. So not only are there large retailers being established where important relationships and customer relationships are important with those individual retailers, call it your high tide, which is probably a stock
Mhm.
a number of people here follow, very well run organization in my view. They are, they are premium wheat at great prices and quality at a great price. But the customers, so our direct customers, actually the provincial distributors. And people
Mhm.
forget that we're going to the wine list, so to speak, and in Canada you sell to that distributor. They at first took the view that they were just the distributor and the federal government provided all the licenses and they were there to sell the product. As time's gone on, they don't want to be sitting on millions of dollars of inventory that doesn't sell. So, and the retailers have to buy them from the list. The retailers are only buying certain products and products that are supported and loved. So those lists are getting tighter and tighter and tighter. Many of the provinces have announced that they are reducing what's called their SKU lists. I think that bodes very well for us. And I know I've spoken about it with you before, which is that we're seeing more customer scoring, like a Costco or a Walmart or a Loblaws does, which is, do you deliver your product on time? Is it low complaints? Does it have a rate of sale? And all of those things. We put a lot of time into attention into that because quality for us isn't just quality of the product, it's quality in every touch point. So whether it's a salesperson in store delivering on time in full with a pallet that's not damaged, or the consumer experience, that's how we get onto those lists, stay on those lists, and keep top of mind for people.
Mhm. The recently it just jumped up right now, but recently you guys were awarded some things. We talked a little bit off air. Why don't we talk about that a little bit? Because you've mentioned over and over again sort of premium quality, things like that. I mean, you're getting recognized clearly, not just by by consumers, but by the industry itself. Talk to that a little bit.
There's a very large event occurring right now in Toronto. It's called the Kind Winter Fair. And why the kind? There's a summer fair as well, but in the winter fair every year is when they do their annual awards. And why those awards are important is they're voted on by the bud tender. When you buy any cannabis product in Canada, other than by mail or by medical, any recreational product, you go into a store and you have to ask for the product and they hand it to you over the counter. And that's a bud tender or a bartender, as you would say in an alcohol setting. Those bud tenders vote on these awards. They also are the only person that's talking to the consumer, and that's very important. So being able to win with them is very exciting. And this year we were nominated in 11 categories. And the second tranche of awards is going up tonight, but so far we've won in 6 categories, including Flower of the Year, which is incredible, Brand of the Year, which is awesome. It's out in social media, so I'm not breaking any, the awards were awarded in front of 1,000 people last night. Brand of the Year, Vape of the Year, Best New Product of the Year. I've got to look at my list. There were so many. And then the Bud Tender's Choice, which is one of the reasons I'm excited about winning Bud Tender's Choice is everything else is a multiple choice where they've already pre-selected the list and you pick through it. In this one, the Bud Tenders actually have to write in what brand they would nominate. And they chose Simply Bare Organic, which is our top shelf brand. And so, we work really hard. And as you can see, my glamorous trailer behind me and the hours we put in and all the things that we do to have a team recognized who's really just putting the good old college try out there and wanting to build a great business. It's really special. It's really special. Yeah.
So obviously getting recognized, brand continues to sort of be top of mind. A lot of customers. Where do you go from here? I mean, we talked a little bit about where you're going business wise, but like innovation wise, I mean, you've sort of thrown so many new ideas out there that are sticking. What else do you do? Where do you go from here?
Paul, it's a great question. And somebody asked me this the other day, and I said, if I told you where we were going, other people would do it too. So, you know, I do want to keep a few cards close to my chest, but I think the story and future and success in cannabis overall is being leaders in genetics and understanding trend, understanding consumers, and understanding how we can put a product out that for whatever that consumer need is, that we can fill it. So if someone comes in and they're looking for some help with sleep, someone comes in and they're looking for a euphoric experience, in which case our Fruit Loops, I highly recommend. It is my current favorite. A lot of people who just want to really chill out love our Comatose. We've got some, we've just launched something called LA Kush Cake in this fall. It's been really well loved as well. So I think it's not always about what's new. It's about making the old new again sometimes too, and doing it really well. And being able to have people trust to come in and purchase your product and know that every time they'll get it right. And one of the things we found is that consistency and importance of quality actually builds the consumer trust and the growth. It's, you know, it's we track every complaint in our business. So whether it's on Instagram, Reddit, comes in through a store, comes in through email, or comes in through our customers, we track them all, and we've watched our complaint list go down and down, and it's tracked monthly in our monthly management meeting. And it just demonstrates to us that we're always doing better. Now, I'm slightly worried about where our current numbers are, because I'm nervous about trying to beat them, because I think the team has done such an incredible job at reducing those complaints. But it's so important that every person that opens up a product builds trust in the brand, and they have a great experience. And that's where we get the growth. That's where we get the rebuy. And I think a lot of people think it's always about a new product. It's actually about building your base and consistency, where people say, I'm going to try the Comatose or the Blue Dream, and every time I know it's going to be like this and I can trust it. And that really builds, you know, kind of like when you open up your can of Bud, you know what it is every time. You don't see inside the can. We want to build that in cannabis.
Awesome. Remind everybody that's listening right now, if you got a question you'd like me to ask Margaret, of course, just use the chat function and I'll ask the questions. Prior to going live here, we had a couple investors that had sent us a bunch of questions in regards to just generally around the business and how you account for things, like things, you know, maybe describe revenue recognition for your different products, or how you guys operate, and then we can get into a couple other questions around that sort of stuff.
Absolutely. Actually, on revenue, it's very straightforward. When it's shipped out of our facility, the contracts with each of the provinces are very clear. So, you know, there's cutoffs, and those are very easily auditable. And we do have a few warehouses that we use, third parties that inventory is consigned to, so that provinces can pull in. But otherwise, it's pretty clean. We do have a return provision that we attach. Otherwise, it's pretty repeatable and consistent. We did, when we launched vape this year, because vape and vape products in the market have a very high return rate and a default defect rate, we included quite a high provision on that. And while I was in there checking, you know, on the first runs of various products going out the door, I went in and checked that the carts individually looked good. And the complaint rate has been much lower, and I'm knocking on wood because it's very important. And so, you know, as long as we've got a return provision and we're tracking that, it should be a very straightforward revenue calculation. There's not really much funny. If it's either shipped out and if it's returned, if we don't have provision to cover it, it's going to hit us right into that bottom line.
Yeah. And so you mentioned you launched vape. Maybe describe what it takes to launch a new product into either, I guess, the provincial areas or I guess clients. I don't know how to describe the provinces as far as that, but
distributors.
How do you launch a brand new product like that?
Well, it's a long process. So if we want to launch a product in Ontario, say in, sorry, I just saw a question, so it distracted me slightly. I'll look at it in a minute. If we want to launch a product in Ontario for next spring, there's usually a 6 months delay. The Ontario government the OCS which is Ontario Cannabis Store, will put out a listing saying what they are looking for in products. You then submit your listing of products. You have a meeting and you present your listing of products, and they may or may not accept them. If they accept them 6 months later, you then get your initial PO, and you can deliver those products. So it's quite a long process. From a working capital perspective, that's also a lot. We use a traditional gate process here at Rubicon, that Procter & Gamble type process, where we have an idea, it goes through gate 1. Does the idea valid, classic opportunity cost? Is the idea worth our people's time to pursue? Then we go through a process at gate 3. The gate is brought back to the executive team, and it's evaluated from a product perspective to see it should go forward. And that's when we look at the value chains. How much money is going to make? How easy is it? Where's the opportunity? How do we ship it? All of the different factors need to be included in gate 3. And gate 5 is the go, no go. So that's how we evaluate things. It is quite a long process. Each province is different. Ontario has a couple product calls a year, as does Quebec. BC, you can do it on an ongoing basis. So it does depend.
And inventory, you carry a high degree of inventory. You have accounts receivable. Maybe describe the two. What is your inventory you carry? How do you turn it over? And then we can talk about accounts receivable.
We manage our inventory, and it is reported to the executive team and to the board in our weekly dashboard. Managing our aging, because we have an agricultural product, very important to be monitoring that. We turn our inventory into cash as quickly as possible. We want to sell it for, highest and best use, as a finance person would think. So, we have 2 brands that we grow for, both 1964 and Simply Bare, which are flower forward brands. 2 of our 3 flagship. The third one is a wellness brand, Wildflower. Anything that doesn't meet the quality standard of Simply Bare or 1964. Now, the strains are never the same. We like to keep them pulled apart and separated. It's very important from a consumer perspective. But we'll take that excess product and sell it under our brand Homestead. And it may be because the strain didn't hit and we didn't sell it through in 64 for some reason. But we can turn it profitably into cash, and that's what we do. We keep those as channels that are open. We could sell a lot more through those channels, but we only use it when we have excess inventory. And that goes across our pre-rolls, and various other products we'll sell through Homestead as well. And it means that, we like to think of it as whole plant utilization. Anything that is the stalks and stems and various other things, stalks and stems might not be the right example, but excess trim, etc., that will go into hash, and then we'll turn it into hash, which will turn into a product. So I know in the meat packing industry, they call it whole carcass utilization. We prefer the term whole plant utilization. So yeah.
Gotcha.
Oh, and you asked me about AR.
Yeah.
Our receivables are at this stage over 95, or I think there's something like 98% at September 30th with governments. So government backed. So we've never, and as far as I'm aware, we've never had a bad debt. I can't recall having one in all the years at Rubicon, but perhaps there was something very minor out there. So it means that we're in a great position with that. Our inventory balance, half of it, typically about half of it, if we have 10 million on the books, about half of it is the non-cash allocation of this fair value of the cannabis plants that I talked about. So as we manage the inventory very carefully, because it's a product that ages. You want to sell it,
Yeah. Doesn't have a super long shelf life.
No.
Cash flow. So you cash flow, positive cash flow this quarter.
Yeah.
When we look at that and going forward, you've got some debt that you're going to take care of. Maybe how does an investor view your capital allocation as you generate more cash? Where does that cash get utilized?
Great question. Firstly, I think we want to grow our business. Some of the ways we can do that, and why our cash flow wasn't as big this year as the results, was actually because we've invested in some new product launches and various things. So our vape launch meant that we've been building up inventory. So there was a lot of outflow of cash to get there. We have an advantage in our industry because we pay our bills. And it turns out, until recently, I've kind of just assumed that was normal, that you pay your bills on time. But it's been it's something that set us apart, and that's kind of fun as an accountant by training. To say, we're if you watch Game of Thrones, I like to joke that we're like Lannisters. We always pay our bills, pay our debts. But as we look forward, I think I've been asked the question of, will you go to a normal course issuer bid and various things like that? As we look at the growth of the business and the current trajectory, I think there is so much. I can't say yes or no because nothing's in place at this stage, but I think there's a lot of opportunity to grow the business and have a stronger business in Canada. And I think I think will be more relevant if we get bigger as a business. And bigger as a business isn't always us buying something else. It's setting up supply agreements to grow our business, keeping our balance sheet in a great position so that we can become more profitable and a stronger business. The Canadian market is moving to single-digit growth from multiple double-digit growth, but it's now sitting on quite a high base of, I think it ended last year around 5.2 billion from StatsCan. It's still going to grow to 5.86 billion this year. So I think we have to remember that there's still a lot of opportunity, and the market share, there's opportunity for us to gain market share within that.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned earlier that there is a resurgence, or there's some sort of production that's coming back online. Back when we spoke last, we were talking about sort of a lot of distressed assets or distressed situations out there. Is that changing, or are we still seeing
There's a lot
that?
of assets still that are just sitting on the sidelines and not in use. I think that I would say that I would rather pay more for something great and a team that's operating, or something that's very close by and very convenient, that is a natural tuck-in from an M&A perspective. The distressed assets, turning them on is costly. There's working capital that's needed. You also have to have somewhere to sell your product. And what I've finally really taken to heart is that there's never been enough good weed, and you can always sell good weed profitably, even if the price goes down because there's an oversupply. And that's what we saw in the last couple of years. The price went down because of the oversupply. I think that going forward, if those facilities turn on, being able to deliver premium quality has been difficult in the Canadian market, and it hasn't been consistently achieved. We've seen the likes of some of the very large companies constantly over the last 5 years say that they're going to go at the premium market, and they've not been able to develop it. So if they've put that much time and energy and the amount of money that they've raised and not been able to do it, that gives me confidence that being in the premium category is the place to be to defend your margins. So maybe they turn on, maybe that goes out and sells into Europe or sells into Australia. It doesn't mean that that's necessarily a threat. Maybe it just brings more consumers into the legal market in those markets. And what we find is, as they move along, they tend to start with the highest THC for the lowest price, and they quickly learn that the experience that they can have is a lot better when you have a better quality product, and people shift along that curve.
I'm going to say the word that everybody in the industry cringes when I say this, but excise, excise taxes.
Just got off a call on it.
Anything new you're hearing? Anything? What do you see playing out that way?
I just was alerted on a government relations chat within the industry that I guess Trudeau today made a comment to Polyev on the floor of Parliament saying, are you going to stop the legalization of weed? I think that's a red herring. The cat's out of the bag. I don't know why he would bring that up. I think it's political jockeying.
Politics, yeah.
I don't know how you would practically do that at this stage. And certainly Trudeau hasn't done much to support the industry. I believe in I had a meeting with the Associate Deputy Minister of Tax Policy at Finance in September, and the head of sales tax policy was also there. My belief, although they wouldn't confirm it, is that the bureaucrats are briefing the government. We've seen briefing notes that they've provided to the politicians saying, cannabis industry is in distress. You need to change this excise. It's all political will at this stage. Could we see something in the fall economic statement, which is likely to come out in the next 2 weeks? Maybe. I think at some stage there'll be regulatory change, but if you could say that was definitely going to happen, I think you'd make a lot of money in the very short term. I can't.
Sure.
The Cannabis Council of Canada, on which I'm on the board of, is doing a lot of lobbying to that effect. The province of British Columbia has sent a letter to the feds asking them to make a change on it. They're very well briefed on it. Political will, I would say.
We'll wait and see. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Unfortunately, there's a few other issues to deal with before they get here, I think. Okay, well, listen, let's take some of the questions that have come in, and then we can jump on back to some of my questions. Philippe asks, how by getting bigger does your moat widen? Could you increase the willingness to pay from customers, which increase your margin, or could you achieve economy of scale, which you could undercut on price? Couple questions there.
So so price is an interesting one because we obviously we move with the market. So I'll put price to the side. I think we're going to see my hypothesis is that we will see some price increases in the market in Canada in the next year. We've had tremendous pressure on price in the last 2 years. I think a lot of companies need those pricing to go up. We've seen a couple of brands already do it. Frankly, from a competitive perspective, I won't comment on that. I would say I think there's a trend there. In terms of our moat, I suspect what's going to happen is my comment earlier on market share and brand recognition. We're going to move to more brand recognition and stronger brands as we move along. The moat will be actually at the provincial distributors with those SKU listings, where the smaller LPs that do not have a brand developed or do not have a winning product formula and the right price to value ratio, they're not going to be able to get their product listed and sold. So they will, in my view, in 5 years, all be contract manufacturing, other than maybe some small sales. And that's where that opportunity that, there's people out there that grow wonderful weed. They just don't have the sophistication. You need your own sales team. You need brands. You need people to manage the marketing. You need, there's a lot to this game. So the moat is growing. I think the question is, who's there at the end of the day? And I believe our brands will be standing there, but how many? Who knows?
Gotcha. So Rahil has asked, as far as what revenue impact can you expect from supply capacity increases through this sort of outsourcing or contracting you're doing on behalf of others?
Good question. I said in our because we haven't given our guidance for 25, I will be other than looking for continued growth of the business, and we're a public company, so I always want to do that. I did say in my prepared remarks at our Q3 that we were looking to contract an additional 20% of flower capacity next year. So that's pretty considerable. We're obviously, my words are expect, always working, you've got to deliver on it. But there's some great teams out there growing excellent weed that I think would be great partners for us.
And then the second part of that question really is around the international markets. How do you look at what can you contribute to the international markets in terms of if you're limited in capacity, how much more dependent are you going to be on these contractors to be able to increase that so you can sell in? And what do you hope to see?
What I hope to see and what do I expect to see are two different things.
Sure.
My view is that we take a test and learn approach. You'll see that from Rubicon. Test, learn, pivot over the first half of the year. I expect that we are selling smallish lots to various companies across the world to test and see who we want to deal with. We like to deal with good, reputable companies that we can rely on and form long-term business arrangements with. My personal goal, but not guidance from the company, would be to have one brand in one market by the end of next year to solidify a route to market, in particular in a medical market where there's a script related to it. I'd like to have the genetics be consistent between Canada and international markets. We're very famous for our Blue Dream that sits under 1964. I think a lot of markets would be very interested in that product in particular. There's a number of others like that. In terms of how we go from there, I think that we are capacity constrained in Canada. We want to continue to win in Canada. That's very important. But look, there's going to be a point in time, depending on where economy is and competitors move, that we may have excess biomass. Or there's some biomass that we can say we can commit to going internationally. And I think that's a great way of looking at it. Maybe look over the course of, call it 5 years. Many countries are going to turn on capacity. So we have to remember that this is going to become a globalized agricultural industry. So winning in Canada and having routes to market in Canada will remain incredibly important. It doesn't necessarily take change in law for there to be an entire country that can no longer import Canadian weed. At this stage, Canada is not importing any weed from anywhere else. The Aussies already, there's been some whispers within the community down there that they would like to, there's a few people that have suggested tariffs. Israel has already done that. It's made it much more difficult to go in. So I think we have to remember that building the route to market in Canada is incredibly important for the strength and ongoing success of your business. And if you think of international possibly as the fuel to, while the Canadian market grows, grow the international market, the Canadian market, maybe the whole base isn't there to take all that premium supply, but over time, maybe they come up and cross and move like that. And then you've got a dominant recurring brand position in Canada. And I see that as about a 5-year play. And it's about how do we strategically get to there.
Right.
Does that make sense? I don't know if I answered that appropriately.
Yeah, I think so. Rahil, if it didn't quite answer your question, you can sort of repeat it in different format. But it sort of brought up another question for me, and not that you guys are doing it right now, but maybe you know how to do it. Like, how do you even sell into another market? How do you go and find a customer? What are you selling, or how do you steer through
that? Because of our reputation here in Canada, the inbound requests are very high. There are a number of conferences and there are a number of very well-known and respected consultants, which are people that we are interested in dealing with, to go to the reputable companies. It's very easy to pick up the phone to some of our peers and say, do you trust these people? You know, the inbound is very easy. Product will need to go through an EU GMP facility to be able to go into some of those markets. But those routes and the timing of our looking at this, they've already been well established by a number of players who's beat down those doors and spent their millions of dollars figuring it out for us. It's made it much easier. They've opened the markets with their mid-grade weed, and we'll be able to come in and take the profitability with our premium stuff.
Perfect.
Not that that was planned or anything, but you know.
Just what is it? The old adage that pioneers are the ones with the arrows in their back, or something like that. You know, being too early can be dangerous.
Did a great job, but the iPhone sure owns the market.
Exactly. Yeah. Right? Exactly. There's a lot of examples of that. Yeah. Okay. A question on stock here. Matthew asked: a big seller knocked down the stock last week. Are you aware of who it was, and if they could have more to sell?
Yes. I'm always very reticent to say people's names because I don't think they're mine to say without their express permission. But we did have a large party that participated in the stock and was formerly an insider. They were none of our other insiders have changed, and that the broker who was responsible for the selling on that confirmed to me on Friday that they are out of the market. It was nothing to do with the company. It was a shareholder decision. So you know, I'm very pleased with actually how the market reacted. I wasn't aware that was going to happen. So it did happen all in a day where it was a high adrenaline day, as you can imagine. And I was really pleased with the support we had from a number of people. And I've heard that from a number of people. Wow, I thought that would have been a lot worse. Look, I think what that means is there's more float out there that's available. We need that as a business. I think it's a great time to buy personally. I'm obviously long Rubicon, so that's my job, and that's the name of the game. But we're trading at less than half of last year's revenue, so I think it's a great time to look at the stock. And I believe that seller is out. I do suspect we're in tax loss selling. I do suspect this is when that may shake a few other things off the tree. That typically happens when you have a big seller. Other people don't understand the dynamics, and that may drive their decision. I tried to proactively reach out to a number of people. We didn't announce anything because there was nothing to do with the company that occurred. And so I'm always happy to talk about it. And if there's any more specific questions, maybe to talk about them offline, please reach out to me, ir@rubiconorganics.com. Or if you have my email address, please send it along.
Sort of another question along that vein, just generally, what's been sort of the level of investor inquiry? I mean, we talk to so many people that want nothing to do with cannabis, and we have others that are starting to get interested because it's been such a chaotic industry for the last little while, and there's opportunities. What are you seeing on the front lines as far as investor inquiries?
I'm seeing a turn right now. The U.S. election was very negative for U.S. cannabis, and has been taken that way, with Florida amendment not passing. Gates, obviously a very controversial choice for Attorney General, who was very pro-cannabis, now being out. I think there's a lot of concern in the U.S. market. So there was a lot of concern then. I had bankers calling me right after our earnings saying, wow, this is a story we need to be covering. And then obviously we had the seller last week, and it's been very interesting over the last 3 weeks. Interest has really turned. And I think a lot of it is value investment, but it's also, I believe there's 5 big catalysts to come in cannabis. I've spoken about them before. The first is excise reform and regulatory reform in Canada. The second is reform in the US, which will, a rising tide will float all boats of everyone's stocks. So whether it's descheduling or federal legalization, etc. The third is major consolidation beginning. The fourth is big alcohol or big tobacco coming in. They are all looking at this file very actively. I don't think they're in any rush. I don't think they need to be in any rush, because especially tobacco has very deep pockets. And then the last one is the most near term happening and live impacting the Canadian industry, which is the turn on of the international markets, where those are medical markets that need product that meets a certain standard, and some of the only trusted weed in the world is coming from Canada. So I think that's going to be the next story, and I think it's going to be really tremendous the next 18 months. It's going to be a slight delay, like we're seeing it now in the market. We're seeing the demand. I think it'll take a while for those results to come out. I'm sure there'll be some promotion around it. I would watch for companies that have underlying foundations that are paying their bills, that are, clear winners, and dealing with counterparties that are also reputable, and making sure they get paid.
It's amazing how I'm hearing that more and more from the stronger companies, and how just paying your bills is getting you business.
Yes.
You're right. You'd think that was normal course for business in general, but in this industry, it does seem to be the normal course.
It's the weirdest thing. And actually, I had meetings with all of our teams at the very end of October. And one of the things I said was, I don't think you guys realize how important, John, who sits over here in AP, and a couple of other people in that team, how important they are to our business. And it goes to show the importance of, and the respect for every part of the business, no matter how senior or junior they are, because they're important to your reputation and how you do business.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. A few more questions here. Rahil says, what would be the fair value of property, plant, and equipment, which is on the books for 24 million as of Q3? Can you give us some color around that? Yeah.
I would say it's about that, possibly more. The land in Delta is worth a lot. Hard to say if you'd have to tear down the facility or keep it, its value in use is higher than that. I can tell you that. We have had an appraisal done recently, obviously with the debt coming up. There are homes in this area where 1 acre is, I think it's 1 acre is $5 million in Delta. So I think it would depend on your situational, and but I'm very confident in that valuation sitting on our books. Certainly, what you don't see is a discussion of impairment coming out of on our balance sheet.
Yeah, and we've been to the site, and it's in a very nice neighborhood. So
we have some beautiful homes actually just next door to us, so that's kind of fun, and it's a lovely view. And there's birds of prey that come down and unfortunately pick up the bunnies that hop around as well on site.
That's right. Okay, another question from Rahil. Are you expecting any cost synergies or restructuring after ERP implementation?
Good point. I mean, restructuring, when I hear the word restructuring, I think people. I don't think that's in our plan. Look, we're a growing business, and if we've got talent, keeping talent is very important, and it's a really big beating heart of what we do. I think that we'll see that cost go out, and I think there's more work to do in terms of efficiency. I think cost savings will come more from, look, I'm looking at our labor force and realizing that with the immigration policies that are happening in Canada, we've got to look at more automation in various places to make sure that we don't have rising labor costs or threats like that. So I think there are cost savings in our business, but to a certain extent, if we've got growth, oftentimes in the results, you don't necessarily see them because they cross each other out. But we do monthly budget to actuals for each of our departments. People are held to account on their budgets. All of that might not be seen in the results, but is certainly happening behind the scenes in terms of how we're allocating resource. So for example, we may get cost savings out of ERP in one team, but we've hired in because we need more supply chain coordinators because we're working with more contract manufacturers to grow our business.
Gotcha. Makes sense. Okay, here's a question from Mark, somebody I think you might know quite well. It says, "Hi, Margaret. Given the supply and demand dynamics in the market and seeming shortage of high quality flower in Canada right now, if this causes price inflation in the upper end of the flower market, what other segments of the market, if any, might also benefit price-wise in your view?"
You know, it's a really good question. I think flower is the single area that will benefit. Flower and pre-roll. I was thinking about this the other day, whether we'll see that in edibles and we'll see that in vape. With the oil related products, I believe a lot of that is going to move to outdoor grow, being able to shift it through, because it's actually about the genetics and whether it's organic and various things like that. And it's about the process that you put it through and the quality with which you do it. I think it's mostly, whether 80+% of it will be seen in the flower market
Mhm.
of price
Okay.
inflation. Yeah.
Okay. Gotcha. Okay, so Trevor from the UK wants to know, it's a bit of a funny question. When is hash going to be legal in the UK? Because he's sick of getting fat on beer.
You know what? Hash is very popular in the UK. I lived there for almost 7 years. And it's very well known. And often in the UK, hash is much more often mixed with tobacco, which
Okay.
certainly will never be legalized. I believe
Right.
those will always be pulled apart. So don't hold your breath on that. There have been companies in Canada that have done a hash stick so that you can include it into your tobacco, and that's something that is an adult choice you can
Okay.
choose to do. But geez, I don't know. I think recreational. I think it's going to go medical in the UK more widely very soon. I can say I was there last summer with my family, met with a ton of friends who are business people over there. 5 years ago, or right before COVID, when I was there, everybody was horrified with my choices, but slightly fascinated. Now they're all curious. Now they're all
Sure.
interested. And one gentleman said, "You wouldn't believe it," and he said it in his very posh voice, "Margaret, you wouldn't believe it. I'm in a trial with my glaucoma and I'm taking cannabis," and he couldn't believe it. So I think the fear is going away.
Yeah,
And it's sort of similar to Canada, which is there's that curiosity of trial.
sure.
And what we do has people feel good and makes people feel good. And I can tell you, I've said it time and time again, my alcohol consumption is way down.
Mhm.
You hear that it's a massive trend. The alcohol companies are very worried. We've
Yeah.
seen Guinness Zero go to be one of the most popular products in the UK. I think weed will do extremely well in that market.
Mhm. Yeah. No, I agree. Okay, next question. Deep says, what do insiders know that keep, okay, wait a minute. What do insiders know that they keep buying but isn't being seen by retail institutional investors? Is there something you feel investors are missing?
I think that the sentiment of cannabis and what's happened in the market is so negative
Mhm.
that we need to show what you'll see is consistent performance and doing what we say we're going to do without over promotion. I think until that comes back and there's some people that fall out of the market, it's going to take a minute. I think the international story is going to build the results of Canadian businesses. I think the board and insiders are trying to say, "Hey, you guys are missing something here, and we're going to take advantage of that. But we're telling you everything you need to know."
Mhm.
But there's been so many people that have said so many things, including Rubicon in the early days. We all thought we'd be selling weed over $10 a gram because that was where it was set by the government, right?
Mhm.
If we were doing what we today, what was originally set out 5 years ago at those pricings, we'd be a 25 million EBITDA business. So it wasn't wrong. It was just that pricing and the number of licenses were very different. So I think that's probably it. I think what we know is that running a good business that's going to be profitable isn't necessarily about hype, it's about delivery.
Mhm.
And I'm really proud of the business that we're running and the team that I get to work with every day. So
Mhm.
I want our brands on shelf for 30 years. I want to walk in the store when I'm retired and be excited to go down there and pop some of my favorite products and tell my grandkids that this is what I did.
Mhm. And for what it's worth, I think the feedback we're getting right now, or what we're seeing, is that it's certainly not institutional investors that are playing down in the microcap space to begin with, but I think it's a lot of the interest in cannabis right now is actually being driven by just generalists. Guys like us. We're not cannabis investors. We're investors, And I think, you know, insiders, certainly insiders on businesses that are still, you know, doing well and improving. Again, it's a fundamental business. So I can appreciate insiders buying because they believe that the business is good, and not necessarily because, you know, it's cannabis, right?
And I think we also have those big catalysts that I talked about,
Mm,
that at some point, whether it's 1 year, 3 years, 5 years, or 10 years, they're going to happen. I mean, this
mhm,
industry isn't going anywhere. And I think that's part of the excitement too,
mhm,
to see how Gen Z is making their choices, as they've only ever known legal source. You know, they didn't have someone that they called. They don't go onto the legacy market. So I think trend is changing, and they're not drinking.
mhm.
I mean, they
Yeah,
are a little bit, but not anywhere near where our generation did.
yeah, yeah. I agree. I agree. Yeah. And I'd say there's some of us older people are starting to, you know, kind of like the odd little.
Well, you know, it's funny. I actually typically have things on me now because, you know, 5 years ago, no, they were kind of horrified of, but they maybe look at the packaging and then they give it back to me. Now they're putting it in their pocket. And I
Sure.
think that tells you a lot. There's still some people, there's still stigma about going in store.
Sure.
I have a number of people that love our wildflower stick, use it every day, who are, you know, they're 40-year-old athletes, as we all are,
Mhm,
right? When they go to the gym. And
mhm.
but they're not quite comfortable walking in store, and that's
Yeah.
okay. That's where we need to
Yeah.
continue to do some good work.
Yeah. That'll come. That'll come. Okay, Rahil asked another question. You have 9.6 million cash on the balance sheet. What is stopping you to open a new facility to increase capacity?
We've done, you know, we talked about opportunity cost at the beginning of this.
Hmm.
It's about, could I do that? Could I improve our existing facility? Could I add to facility? Or can I go out and make deals to take more product and sell it and turn it over more quickly to be able to get there? Those are evaluations that are ongoing and that we are doing, and I think that's a very apt question. I like to keep dry powder because I want to take advantage of opportunities. So, you know, we could have, as a business, made a decision to not have any debt, and manage our business differently. But we decided that we want to be able to have growth capital for when the right opportunity strikes. And I'm not going to tell you all my secrets, but I'm going to tell you
Hmm.
that we certainly are always looking for what is the right decision, to get our business to be bigger and stronger, and to cement our brands more and win more market share in the Canadian and international space in future.
Hmm. I mean, I just look from the outside, I look into the industry, and I got to believe anybody who's sitting on any kind of cash or has the capacity to do things wants to be flexible, because there's got to be so many different opportunities to present themselves, whether they're acquisitions or whether just partnerships or any kind of opportunity. There's so many distressed players out there that just can't, they
Yeah.
don't have those options, right? So I can appreciate having cash on the balance
And
sheet
there's
as
a lot of
something.
people, when we go and look at something, 98% of the time, it could be that what they've missed telling you is that they've got $100,000 in cash and 9 million in AP.
Yeah.
You know, I think that's the single biggest issue, is people managing their cash flow. So if you look at our balance sheet, in particular, when we get to December 31st, after we've done our refinancing and it's all closed, you know, you're going to look at our balance sheet and say, that's a reasonable business that I can really get behind
Mhm.
and invest in. And those guys have dry powder to go and do things. And
Yeah.
I think that's very powerful. I want to get that behind us.
Hmm.
And so there are some big things. We've called 2024 a very foundational year for us. You know, a lot of people say you don't buy the sexy businesses. I know that aspects of our business can appear, I mean, it's a lot of fun, but you know, ERP isn't very fun and it's not very
Yeah.
sexy, but it's critical for growth of our business. Same thing, you know, vape launch, very important to get it right. Some of the work that we've been doing around our cultivation and around our genetics, laying foundation, building all those contract manufacturing agreements. They take time to do them right, to find the right partners. You end up going through a lot of people, you do due diligence, you make sure you're breaking bread and looking people in the eye and building your business together. We very much have an approach similar to McDonald's, which is their three-legged stool they talk about a lot, which is that their franchisees and their suppliers are as important as they are into building their business. If you look at our board and who's on it, we have a couple of people that spent their life in contract manufacturing, and then a couple of people that were on the other side of the table in terms of building brand and understanding how we want to get bigger. We need to be great partners to
Mhm.
grow that. And so I think there's a lot of opportunity yet to come.
Mhm. Yeah, no, for sure, for sure. And you just gotta be ready for it. You gotta be paying attention, ready for it, and able to jump on an opportunity. Okay, Mark, a specific bit of product here. Mark says, can you explain why Rubicon's Blue Dream genetics would be more in demand around the world than another grower's Blue Dream?
I can. So oftentimes it's the pheno, or the specific, everybody's got a daisy, but it's the strain of the daisy that you've got in the particular cut of it. Remembering that, and this is a cut that was brought in when we first got our license. You got a holiday. It was actually the first flower we grew. People in the Canadian market, because it was such a beautiful cut of the flower, stopped growing Blue Dream because our Blue Dream was so good. Now there's others that have come back into it. It expresses incredibly well in living soil. So it's a terpene rich. It oddly is a low, relatively low, or considered low THC flower. It sometimes comes in at 19% to 22%, where a lot of the market people say it needs to be 30%. Well, if you look at a nug, that means 30% of the nug is individually THC. So it's on a percentage basis. So that's where some of these metrics get a little funny. But our Blue Dream, it's the particular cut of it, and we spend a lot of time and effort and energy tasting and trialing our products. Yes, there is a tasting panel at Rubicon. Every batch gets tasted. We have an R&D license, and it goes through a big protocol process. It's very important to us to make sure that we're putting quality products out. The Blue Dream is requested because people come to Canada and when they're buyers for these various places, and it's one of the products that continues to be a top seller, even with that lower THC, because the experience is excellent. Yeah.
Listen, so 2024 we've seen a lot of progress in the business, lots of new things going on. Things are obviously quite busy. What sort of, let's say, new challenges are you facing? I know the industry is sort of throwing your way, but is there anything that sort of keeps you up at night right now?
Yeah, there's a few. One is, how do the independent retailers in Canada perform, and what's going to happen in terms of the landscape there? We have friends both in the independent retailers space and customers, and in the large chains. Would love to see an industry that supports both in future. I think that's a challenge, and trying to figure out how to, the independent retailers want unique product, but it all has to come through a list. So there's some challenges there. I think in the international markets, we're going to see chunky revenues. So I think we're going to see sometimes where we can sell a lot, and then depending on when your export permits come off and not, I think it's going to be, and we've seen that in those playing it in a high and low and a high and low. So long as we've got the cash working capital and the Canadian business running steadily, for us, we're going to look at it on a longer time period. But I do see those as challenges. And look, quality supply, getting quality supply. Right now, we've got wonderful people. I'd like to keep all of them. And I think that we're finding on the good side that we post a job and we get a lot of inbound inquiries. And that has changed. So positive is that the tightening of the labor force has actually improved our position to retain staff. And it's a competitive marketplace, and we have a lot of talent that we'd like to keep.
Gotcha. What sort of catalysts or maybe metrics or anything? What should investors really sort of keep an eye on, say, over the next 3 to 6 months for Rubicon?
What's going to happen, and as we go through the international markets, how we land the year, our continued positioning and quality. Reddit is a great place to hear how our products are doing. It sounds ridiculous. There's a few haters out there, and there's always going to be, and kind of means you've made it, right?
Sure.
You've got some haters. But I think those are, walk into a store if you're in Canada and ask how we're doing. That is the probably most, if you want to get the lay of the land, do they know our brands? Do they know our products? And do they like them? And are we having winners out there? How are their new product launches going? Those are very important. And are the numbers there? Watch for our debt refinancing, and seeing when we hopefully hear more news tonight on the awards. Those are very impactful because the momentum you can get off of a single SKU from the recognition from the bud tenders is very important to us.
Sure. Yeah, can understand that. Okay, did we miss anything? Is there anything that
you're pretty
we
informed
didn't cover?
I think what I would say is we want to be the trusted and quality, best branded Canadian cannabis company. We've recently, I heard the story of a British Columbia company of Paladin Securities. In the 80s, they were 30 people on the North Shore. I heard the CEO speak. They are now 30,000 people across North America with a dominant position. And the question they always ask themselves is, why not us? And our chief commercial officer and I went and heard this talk, and we both walked out. We both took the single nugget out, which was, why not us? Yeah, we didn't raise the 7 billion of cannabis. Yeah, we've had some ups and downs. Yes, this industry's given us a lot, but there is room for companies to emerge. And I believe we can do that. Be the winner.
Absolutely. Why not us? I love that. I'm gonna be using that a lot more.
It's good, isn't it? I mean, when you said it, I just went,
absolutely. Yeah.
We've been operating like that without thinking it. And I think sometimes we forget, like, these awards, winning these awards has just been such a shock. And so wonderful to show to our team that their hard work is acknowledged, and that, you know, we that you can really care and really put your hard work in and start to move the needle and have positive impact. And you don't need to do it from, you know, we can do it the way that's authentic to us. But I also would like our shareholders to do very well. And I have a bit of a point of pride and a chip on my shoulder about that, given what's happened with the stock. So we've got some work to do.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, we'll be watching all the work you do. So I appreciate that, Margaret. We've been speaking with Margaret Brodie, CEO of Rubicon Organics, symbol ROMJ on the Venture Exchange and ROMJF in the US. Margaret, it's always fun to catch up. You're my go-to expert when it comes to cannabis. So we'll stay on your we'll be harassing you from time to time for more information.
And please go and try our products. And if you're a smoker and you want an indica, try our new LA Kush. And don't kill me, but Stinky Pinky just won Flower of the Year under 1964. I know the name is, I did not sign off on that name. It snuck past me. But my personal favorite, Fruit Loops in Simply Bare, is just an incredible product. And there is an edible Simply Bare product too. I would really recommend it. I can tell you, you will thank me if you try it.
There you go. For those that partake, we've got some recommendations for you. And if you've got any questions, definitely reach out to Margaret. Margaret, one more time, how do they get a hold of you if they want to answer any questions?
IR@rubiconorganics.com, and Callum Clayton, our Director of Corporate Finance, or I will respond to you.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Thank you so much, Margaret. We'll catch up with you real soon. Take care, and bye for now.
Thanks, everyone.